In November 2024, antique dealer Robert Chen was organizing inventory at his Philadelphia shop when he discovered an unusual family photograph tucked behind a larger framed print. The sepia-toned image showed what appeared to be a typical middle-class American family from the early 1900s, but something about the composition made him examine it more carefully. The photograph depicted 5 people arranged formally in front of a modest wooden house. A distinguished man in his 40s stood behind his seated wife, while 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, were positioned around them. Everyone wore their finest clothing, suggesting this was a special occasion worthy of professional photography. The technical quality was excellent for 1909, with sharp focus and careful lighting that highlighted each family member's features. A photographer's stamp on the back identified it as the work of Muller Studio, Philadelphia, along with a handwritten date, September 15, 1909. However, Chen noticed something that made him look more closely at the mother's hands. While her right hand rested naturally on her lap, her left hand held what appeared to be a folded document or letter. The paper's positioning seemed deliberate rather than accidental, as if the photographer had specifically arranged for it to be visible in the image. The mother's expression also seemed unusual for a family portrait. While the father and children displayed the formal but pleasant demeanor typical of period photography, the mother's face showed subtle tension around her eyes and mouth. Her grip on the document appeared firm, almost protective. Chen had handled thousands of family photographs throughout his career, but this one felt different. The combination of the formal pose, the mother's tense expression, and the mysterious document suggested this wasn't simply a commemorative family portrait. Something significant was happening in this family's life when this photograph was taken. He set the image aside for further research, sensing that the story behind this seemingly peaceful family portrait might be more complex and dramatic than it initially appeared. Research into Muller Studio revealed that it was one of Philadelphia's most prominent photography establishments during the early 1900s, known for serving both wealthy clients and middle-class families seeking quality portrait work. Studio owner Heinrich Müller had immigrated from Germany in 1895 and built a reputation for technical excellence and artistic sensitivity. Müller's business records, preserved in the Philadelphia City Archives, showed that September 1909 was an unusually busy period for family portraits. Many clients seemed to be commissioning formal photographs during this specific time frame, suggesting some significant event was motivating families to document themselves professionally. The studio's appointment book for September 15, 1909, listed the family as Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Richardson, 1247 Carpenter Street. Additional notes indicated that Mrs. Richardson had specifically requested that she be photographed holding important papers, and that the session required extra care with lighting and composition. Heinrich Müller's personal diary, discovered in his descendants' possession, contained an entry about the Richardson session. Müller wrote that Mrs. Richardson seemed nervous and determined during the photography appointment and insisted that the document in her hands be clearly visible in the final image. The diary entry also noted that the Richardson family appeared to be under some kind of pressure, and that Mr. Richardson seemed uncomfortable with his wife's insistence on displaying the document. Müller observed that this was unusual, as most family portraits emphasized unity and happiness rather than tension or controversy. Further research revealed that 1247 Carpenter Street was located in a respectable working-class neighborhood populated primarily by skilled tradesmen, small business owners, and their families. The area was known for its strong community ties and stable family life. However, city directories from 1909 showed that the Richardson family had moved to this address only recently, suggesting they might have been experiencing some kind of transition or disruption in their lives. The photographer's detailed notes about the session indicated that this wasn't a typical commemorative portrait, but rather documentation of something significant happening in the Richardson family's life. Philadelphia City records revealed that Thomas Richardson was a skilled machinist employed at the Baldwin Locomotive Works, one of the city's largest industrial employers. The company manufactured steam locomotives for railroads throughout America and employed thousands of skilled workers in its sprawling factory complex. Thomas had worked at Baldwin for 12 years, earning steady wages that allowed his family to maintain a comfortable middle-class lifestyle. His employment record showed consistent performance and gradual wage increases, suggesting he was a valued employee with job security. However, labor relations at Baldwin Locomotive Works had become increasingly tense during 1909. The International Association of Machinists was organizing workers to demand better wages, shorter hours, and improved safety conditions. Company management strongly opposed unionization efforts and had begun taking actions against employees suspected of supporting union activities. Marriage records showed that Thomas had married Catherine O'Brien in 1894. Catherine came from an Irish immigrant family and had worked as a seamstress before her marriage. The couple had 3 children, William, age 12, Margaret, age 10, and James, age 7. Property records revealed that the Richardson family had previously owned a small house in another Philadelphia neighborhood, but had sold it in August 1909, just 1 month before the photograph was taken. The sale appeared to have been completed quickly, suggesting financial pressure or other urgent circumstances. School enrollment records showed that the Richardson children had transferred to new schools in September 1909, coinciding with the family's move to Carpenter Street. The timing suggested that the family's relocation was sudden and possibly involuntary. Catherine Richardson's name appeared in several Philadelphia Suffrage Organization membership lists, indicating she was actively involved in the women's rights movement. This involvement would have been controversial in 1909, when many men opposed women's political activities. The combination of labor organizing, women's suffrage activities, and sudden relocation suggested the Richardson family was experiencing significant social and economic pressures when their portrait was taken. Baldwin Locomotive Works Company records revealed that management had launched an aggressive campaign against union organizing during 1909. The company hired private detectives to identify workers supporting the International Association of Machinists and began systematic efforts to remove union sympathizers from their workforce. Internal company correspondence, discovered in the Historical Society of Pennsylvania archives, showed that Thomas Richardson's name appeared on a list of employees requiring close monitoring due to suspected union activities. The company had documented his attendance at several meetings where labor organizing was discussed. Pinkerton Detective Agency reports from 1909 detailed surveillance operations targeting Baldwin employees suspected of union involvement. Thomas Richardson was among dozens of workers whose activities were monitored both at work and in their personal lives, including their family associations and community involvement. The company's anti-union strategy included economic pressure on workers' families. Management threatened to blacklist union supporters, making it difficult for them to find employment elsewhere in Philadelphia's industrial sector. These threats often forced workers to choose between their jobs and their organizing activities. Catherine Richardson's involvement in women's suffrage organizations created additional complications for her husband's employment. Company management viewed political activism by workers' wives as evidence of dangerous radical tendencies that threatened workplace stability and social order. Baldwin Locomotive Works had begun offering financial incentives to workers who reported on their colleagues' union activities. This policy created suspicion and tension among employees, as workers feared their conversations and activities were being monitored by informants. The company also used housing pressure as a tool against union organizers. Many Baldwin employees lived in company-owned housing or relied on company recommendations for rental properties. Workers suspected of union activities often found themselves unable to secure adequate housing for their families. Thomas Richardson's sudden need to sell his house and relocate his family suggested that company pressure was affecting his personal finances and housing situation, forcing the family into economic crisis despite his steady employment. Advanced photographic analysis revealed that the document Catherine Richardson held was a multi-page legal paper with official seals and signatures visible along the edges. Digital enhancement showed portions of text that appeared to be formatted like a legal petition or formal complaint. Comparison with historical documents from the period suggested the paper might be related to labor organizing activities or legal proceedings involving workers' rights. The formal presentation and Catherine's protective grip indicated the document's significant importance to the family. Philadelphia court records from September 1909 revealed that several Baldwin Locomotive Works employees had filed complaints with federal authorities regarding company intimidation and illegal surveillance of workers attempting to organize unions. These complaints detailed violations of workers' rights to organize and associate freely. The National Labor Relations Board's predecessor organization had received numerous reports about Baldwin's anti-union activities during 1909. Federal investigators were building cases against companies that used illegal tactics to prevent worker organizing, including surveillance, economic coercion, and housing discrimination. Legal documents from the period showed that Catherine Richardson had signed an affidavit supporting her husband's complaint against Baldwin Locomotive Works. Her statement described company harassment of workers' families and economic pressure designed to discourage union activities. The affidavit detailed how company agents had approached Catherine directly, warning her that her husband's job and family's housing were at risk if he continued attending union meetings. These threats extended to her own suffrage activities, which company representatives claimed reflected dangerous political radicalism. Catherine's decision to hold the legal document in the family portrait represented a bold statement of defiance against company intimidation. By documenting her possession of the complaint papers, she was creating evidence of the family's courage in standing up to corporate pressure. The photograph served as both family documentation and political statement, showing that the Richardson family refused to be intimidated despite facing significant economic and social pressure from powerful corporate interests. Department of Labor. Records revealed that Baldwin Locomotive Works was under federal investigation during 1909 for violating workers' rights to organize and associate freely. Federal agents had documented systematic company efforts to prevent union activities through surveillance, intimidation, and economic coercion. Special Agent Daniel Murphy had been assigned to investigate complaints from Baldwin employees, including Thomas Richardson's detailed account of company harassment and surveillance. Murphy's reports described a pattern of illegal corporate behavior designed to suppress worker organizing through fear and economic pressure. The federal investigation focused on Baldwin's use of private detectives to monitor workers' personal lives, including their family activities, community associations, and political involvement. These surveillance operations violated workers' constitutional rights to privacy and free association. Murphy's reports documented that Baldwin management had threatened to blacklist union supporters throughout Philadelphia's industrial sector, effectively preventing them from finding employment elsewhere. This economic coercion constituted illegal interference with workers' rights to organize. The investigation revealed that Baldwin had pressured landlords to evict workers suspected of union activities, creating housing insecurity designed to discourage organizing efforts. The company's housing discrimination violated federal fair housing principles and workers' rights to adequate shelter. Federal agents discovered that Baldwin had offered financial rewards to workers who reported on their colleagues' union activities, creating a workplace atmosphere of suspicion and fear that interfered with legitimate organizing efforts. The Department of Labor was building a comprehensive case against Baldwin Locomotive Works, using worker testimony and documentary evidence to demonstrate systematic violations of federal labor laws. Thomas and Catherine Richardson's complaint provided crucial evidence for this case. Federal investigators praised the courage of workers like the Richardsons, who were willing to document company intimidation despite facing significant personal and economic risks. Their willingness to speak out was essential for building legal cases against corporate abuse. The investigation represented early federal efforts to protect workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively, establishing important legal precedents for future labor rights enforcement. Women's suffrage organization records revealed that Catherine Richardson was an active member of the Philadelphia Equal Rights Association, participating in rallies, petition drives, and educational campaigns promoting women's voting rights. Her political involvement was considered radical and threatening by many male employers during 1909. The suffrage movement's connection to labor organizing created additional pressure on families like the Richardsons. Many employers viewed women's political activism as evidence of dangerous social radicalism that threatened traditional authority structures in both workplace and society. Catherine's suffrage activities included organizing women workers to support their husbands' union efforts. She helped coordinate boycotts of businesses that mistreated workers and organized support networks for families facing economic pressure due to labor organizing. The Philadelphia Equal Rights Association had documented cases where women's suffrage activities resulted in employment consequences for their husbands. Companies regularly discriminated against workers whose wives participated in political activism, viewing such activity as evidence of family disloyalty to established social order. Catherine's decision to include the legal document in her family portrait reflected her understanding that women's rights and workers' rights were interconnected struggles against powerful corporate and political interests that sought to maintain traditional hierarchies. The suffrage organization provided legal support and advice to members facing harassment due to their political activities. Catherine had consulted with suffrage lawyers about protecting her family from company retaliation while continuing her political involvement. Federal investigators noted that companies often targeted workers' wives as a way to discourage men from union activities. By threatening family security through housing and employment pressure, companies sought to exploit traditional male protective instincts to suppress organizing efforts. Catherine's courage in maintaining her political activities despite company pressure represented the broader connection between women's rights and labor rights during the Progressive era. Her activism challenged both gender and economic hierarchies simultaneously. The photograph documented her refusal to be intimidated, showing that she was determined to continue fighting for both her family's economic rights and women's political equality despite significant personal risk. Philadelphia labor and suffrage. Organizations rallied around the Richardson family as their case gained attention throughout the city's progressive community. The family's courage in documenting company harassment inspired other workers and activists to speak out against corporate intimidation. The Central Labor Union of Philadelphia issued statements supporting federal investigation of Baldwin Locomotive Works and praising workers like Thomas Richardson who risked their livelihoods to document corporate violations of workers' rights. Local newspapers, particularly those supporting progressive causes, published articles about the Richardson case and other examples of corporate harassment targeting workers' families. These stories built public support for stronger federal protections of labor organizing rights. Religious leaders from several Philadelphia denominations condemned Baldwin's intimidation tactics as violations of Christian principles regarding worker dignity and family security. Clergy members organized prayer meetings and fundraising efforts to support families facing economic pressure due to labor organizing. The Philadelphia Equal Rights Association organized rallies highlighting the connection between women's suffrage and workers' rights, using Catherine Richardson's case as an example of how corporate power threatened both gender equality and economic justice. Community members organized informal support networks providing economic assistance to families affected by company retaliation. These networks helped workers maintain their organizing activities despite threats to their employment and housing security. Local politicians began questioning Baldwin Locomotive Works' business practices and their impact on Philadelphia's working families. Progressive city council members called for municipal investigations of corporate harassment and intimidation tactics. The Richardson family's photograph became a symbol of resistance to corporate power, displayed at labor meetings and suffrage rallies throughout Philadelphia. The image represented ordinary families' courage in standing up to powerful interests that threatened their rights and dignity. However, the family also faced significant opposition from conservative community members who viewed labor organizing and women's suffrage as dangerous threats to social stability and traditional family values. The federal investigation of Baldwin Locomotive Works concluded in early 1910 with significant legal consequences for the company. Federal prosecutors filed charges against Baldwin management for violating workers' rights to organize and associate freely, using testimony and evidence provided by families like the Richardsons. The legal case resulted in substantial fines against Baldwin Locomotive Works and federal court orders requiring the company to cease harassment and intimidation of workers attempting to organize unions. The company was also required to reinstate workers who had been fired for union activities. Thomas Richardson was among the workers reinstated to their positions with back pay compensation for wages lost due to company retaliation. However, the family's courage in challenging corporate power had permanent consequences for their social and economic position within Philadelphia's industrial community. The legal victory established important precedents for federal protection of workers' organizing rights and created a foundation for stronger labor rights enforcement throughout American industry. The Richardson case was cited in subsequent legal proceedings involving corporate harassment of union organizers. Catherine Richardson's role in the case was recognized by women's suffrage organizations throughout Pennsylvania. Her courage in documenting corporate intimidation while maintaining her political activism made her a prominent figure in the state's suffrage movement. However, the family faced ongoing social pressure from conservative community members who viewed their legal challenge to corporate authority as dangerous radicalism. Some neighbors and former friends distanced themselves from the Richardsons following the publicity surrounding their case. The photograph continued serving as historical documentation of the family's courage and the broader struggle for workers' rights during the Progressive Era. The image was preserved in labor history archives as evidence of ordinary families' contributions to social justice movements. Thomas Richardson continued working at Baldwin Locomotive Works until his retirement, but his relationship with company management remained tense. The family's legal victory had protected their immediate rights, but created lasting tension within Philadelphia's industrial community. The case contributed to growing public support for stronger labor protections and women's suffrage, demonstrating how individual families' courage could contribute to broader social and political change. The discovery and investigation of the Richardson family's 1909 photograph revealed a powerful story of courage and resistance during America's Progressive Era. What appeared to be a peaceful family portrait had actually documented a moment of defiance against corporate intimidation and support for fundamental workers' rights. The photograph's journey from a forgotten antique shop discovery to historical evidence demonstrated how ordinary families contributed to significant social change through their willingness to challenge powerful interests. Catherine Richardson's decision to include the legal document in her family portrait had preserved crucial evidence of early 20th century labor struggles. Labor historians recognize the Richardson case as an important example of how workers, families, particularly women, played crucial roles in organizing efforts and legal challenges to corporate power. Catherine's activism represented the intersection of women's rights and labor rights during the Progressive Era. The photograph was donated to the Library Company of Philadelphia, where it became part of a permanent collection documenting Philadelphia's labor history and social justice movements. Educational programs use the image to teach students about ordinary families' contributions to workers' rights and women's suffrage. Modern labor organizations reference the Richardson case when advocating for worker protections and organizing rights. Their story demonstrates that corporate harassment of workers and their families is a persistent problem requiring continued vigilance and legal enforcement. Women's rights organizations celebrate Catherine Richardson as an early example of political activism that challenged both gender and economic hierarchies. Her courage in maintaining her suffrage activities despite corporate pressure inspired generations of women activists. The federal legal precedents established through the Richardson case influenced subsequent labor rights legislation and enforcement, contributing to the development of comprehensive worker protections that continue protecting American workers today. Philadelphia historical societies created walking tours and educational exhibits, highlighting the Richardson family's neighborhood and their contributions to the city's progressive history. The tours demonstrate how ordinary residential streets were sites of significant social and political change. The shocking truth about what the mother was holding had revealed a powerful story of family courage, legal resistance, and social justice, advocacy that had been preserved in a seemingly peaceful family portrait for over a century, demonstrating how historical photographs can document moments of extraordinary significance in ordinary families' lives.